So it might be different for you depending on when and where you're watching. Right, I'm just going to pop on to my other places real quick, make sure sound's working and all of that jazz. That I'm in the places I need to be and all the things. I hope everyone had a good holiday. Oh, seems like it's working. All right. I hope everyone had a good holiday and New Year's. And for me, I've been taking this time to the last, like that week between Christmas and New Year's, I was off of teaching. And so I was like deep into like alone time and reflecting. And I was like, what was working that I want to continue into 2023? What was not working in 2022 that I need to let go of, old mindsets, all that. And I'm still in that reflective state. I haven't quite gotten out of that state and into the next stage, which is kind of like the ready for action taking, right? And so I want to talk today about why I'm doing an experiment of not like making SMART goals this year. And of course, I choose to change my mind if at any point I'm like, okay, reverting back, right? Because I feel like all of these things are experiments depending on what type of season of life we're in. But some of the things that I realized from reflecting on 2022 that were not serving me kind of revolve around SMART goals. So I want to get into that and let you know what I'm choosing to do instead. In case you're like me, right? Which you might be, and you're like, you know what? SMART goals just don't work for me either, I feel like, right? There's nothing wrong with SMART goals or anything like that. And for some people, they are fantastic. Just based off of the learning from my own life, I feel like, okay, maybe I need to try something new. And I know that they're always there if I need them. Okay. All right. So, first, what are SMART goals if you don't know, right? It's kind of like a template or an acronym for very specific goal setting. So, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Okay. That's kind of what the SMART stands for in SMART goals. I first learned this in teaching, right? Because we are like show students how to create SMART goals. Here's what I've learned about me and SMART goals. One, well, there's a couple of things. First, I feel like for me, they don't necessarily touch on why I'm doing something. Like to me, they feel very flat and cold and they don't touch on the why. And so it's hard for me to stick with them because I don't have my why behind it. So, like when I'm struggling for my goals, I don't have that why piece in there, if that makes sense. Like, why am I doing this? Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing is I have to look at my notes because I'm a little rusty after my break and I have it all listed here. And then I just went kind of like brain dead. I shouldn't say that. Cancel, clear. My brain just needs a little bit more time to process this morning. All right. So, okay. They don't address the why or the belief system. And a lot of times with SMART goals, they put obviously one of the things is timely, attainable, and realistic. Okay. That right there, like the vision I have for myself and the big ones are, some might say, not realistic or timely, right? Like I don't like to put barriers on like my vision and my intentions. right? And I know a lot of people say, well, you take that big vision and you break it down into a very small goal that is attainable and realistic. But what I've learned about myself from 2022 is when I put pressure on myself of like, because you take your SMART goal, right? And you break it down into like action steps, right? I need to do these things every day to reach my goal by this time. And that's great on paper. I love that on paper, right? I'm a teacher, I'm a planner. I'm like, yes, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this, and this. Not taking into account that life varies. You don't always have set like time frames, especially like working moms, which I'm sure you probably are if you're watching me. Even stay-at-home moms, because when I'm off and on breaks, I actually have a harder time getting stuff done than when I'm actually working, right? So to me, I feel like, yeah, that's great if your schedule is very set and you're very set in your ways, but for me, life doesn't happen that way. And so for me, what happens when I set SMART goals is I put it all on paper, I plan out my action steps, and then if I miss something, or if something comes up, or if, I choose to spend time with my kids, or something comes up, or they want to play with me, or something like that, then I get really hard on myself and I let the pressure get to me. And then I'm wondering, like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling really irritable right now? Why am I feeling very anxious? Why am I all of a sudden feeling overwhelmed? Why am I feeling so hard on myself? Like, what is going on? Why am I feeling overly emotional? And I realize it's because I'm putting all this pressure on myself. And then if I'm not following through, which I usually don't, right? Because it's not connected to my why and I don't have that deeper meaning, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, like I'm getting really hard on myself for not accomplishing these things, right? So what happens to me with SMART goals in a very succinct way is I turn my value, my worth into my output of a SMART goal. Like if I'm attaining my goals, then I'm worthy. If I'm not attaining my goals, then I'm not worthy. And I know that's something like that can be worked through and overcome. However, I also have other strategies that I'm going to talk about that don't do that. So I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll try something. Because the third thing about SMART goals is I learned that when I do them, I tend to get out of line with like my inner personal power. Right? I make decisions that don't necessarily go along with my values or my vision for life, because I get hyper focused on like trying to meet this one goal by this one time, that I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to do the things. I'm just going to do the things. I'm just going to do the things. And then that takes me kind of off onto a different path than what maybe I would want. Okay. So that's kind of my reasoning for experimenting without doing them. However, with my Aroma Freedom, I still tend to use them as a starting point, but I never really end up with SMART goals. My goals always end up being like more heart centered anyway. So, and again, I reserve the right to change my mind. Okay. But here's what I do instead, or what I've been doing, and it's been working much better for me. One of the things I realized about during 2022 is that when I released that pressure, like during breaks, or once I got to a point where I was like, I'm too overwhelmed, I need to take some things off my plate and just be okay with that, is when I actually started having a lot more success. Like when I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take that off my burner, take that off my plate, and whatever happens, happens. And that mindset was a lot more freeing, and I had a lot more success with that. So that's one of those things that I'm bringing into 2023 is like, it's all right. All you have to do, Brittany, is like feel good and be kind and, you know, do your best and not worry about if you're doing enough and your worthiness around that. Right. Like, stop trying to like force it, basically. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is I'm still setting intentions. I still have a vision and I still have goals. They're just not necessarily in this like standard box of like, follow this format, right? Follow this sentence frame. By blank, I will blank, blank, by doing blank so that I can, blank. I just don't follow that format. For me, it's more like, what makes me feel good in life? What am I expecting? And what are my intentions? And stating those and being in a place of like, this is what it feels like when that happens, when these things are aligned, and going up that, right? Still focusing on them every day, still writing them down, still coming back to that. But for me, that's much more in alignment, because then when I make decisions, it's not, well, is that going to, hit that goal? Is that going to hit that check mark? Or it's more like, does that feel right? Is that going with what I'm saying yes to in the new year? And I still focus on those daily, still writing them down, but I also feel like they're more flexible, right? If I find something's not working, or sometimes it's like, oh, you get something and you're like, oh, was that even really what I wanted? I'm able to change that and adjust, where I feel like the SMART goals are much more rigid. And setting intentions for me comes back to my why, right? Like, what am I saying yes to in 2023? What do I want? And why do I want it? How does it make me feel? And going back to that, right? I think a great example of this is when you ask kids what their goals are. They're like, I want to be a better reader. I want to be a better writer, right? Those are intentions to get better at something, right? But a lot of times what we do is we're like, that's great, but that's not specific. That's not measurable. We don't have any timelines for that. So let's actually make your goal how many words you're going to read in a minute correctly, or how fast you're going to read, right? That's kind of that SMART goal. And really, it's like the kids just want to get better, right? And so I'm tapping into my inner child and being like, just what do I want? How do I want my life to improve? How do I want my growth to improve? How do I want my business to improve, or my career or my finances to improve? How do I want my health to improve? And starting from that place and going, why do I want those things, right? So that, how am I going to do this? So that, why? And just letting that be enough, right? Like, letting that be enough. All right. Let me know what you think about that. If you set any intentions or anything, I would love to hear your feedback. If you're like, I live by SMART goals, and you want to tell me like why, or why I should change my mind, I like that too, right? To each their own, right? Someone was saying, someone had commented on something the other day of mine, and they were like, I like that, but I'm going to add my own flair to it. And I was like, ooh, I like that. I'm going to take that and I'm going to add my own flair to it. So if you want to take any of these and add your own flair, go for it. I would love to hear it. I'm always changing and evolving and growing. All right. Otherwise, you guys have the best rest of your week. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.